Have you ever sat across from someone you've known for years, decades even, and felt like you were suddenly speaking into thin air? You're sharing a story, maybe something small like what the neighbor's cat did that morning, or how you finally fixed that squeaky cabinet door, and they just nod. No smile, no follow-up, just that faraway look in their eyes like they're already somewhere else. And you find yourself wondering, when did this happen? When did we stop connecting? If you've ever felt that growing silence in a room that used to be filled with laughter, you're not alone. I know it's not easy to talk about, especially when we've built so much history with someone, raised families, survived hardships, shared holidays, grown older together. But love, as wonderful as it is, can change. And sometimes it fades so quietly that we don't even realize it's leaving until it's already mostly gone. Today, I want to have an honest conversation with you, not to point fingers, not to stir up blame, but to help you notice the subtle ways love can slip away before it turns into something cold and unrecognizable. Because you deserve to feel loved, seen, and valued every day, at every age. So let's take a closer look at what those early signs can look like, not the dramatic arguments or slammed doors we often see on TV. I'm talking about the quieter moments, the tiny shifts that over time can tell us everything we need to know. One of the earliest and most easily overlooked signs is when someone stops being curious about your world. Think about that for a moment. Remember when they used to ask how your doctor's visit went, or wanted to hear all about your niece's graduation, or the book you were reading? Sign number 1. Loss of curiosity. When someone cares about you, truly cares, they're interested in your everyday moments, not just the big stuff. They lean in when you talk. They remember your stories. They ask questions not because they have to, but because they want to. But when that emotional bond starts to weaken, something changes. You'll notice they stop looking up when you speak. They might give you a quick aha without even glancing your way. They won't remember the things you told them yesterday, and it's not because they're forgetful or distracted. It's because the emotional investment is fading. Let me tell you about Nancy and Joe from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. They'd been married for 38 years. Nancy loved chatting with Joe about everything. What the dog dug up in the backyard, how the flowers were doing, even the funny thing the cashier said at the grocery store. Joe used to listen. He'd chuckle, nod, ask her to repeat the good parts. But over the past year, Nancy started to notice he wasn't really there when she talked. His eyes stayed on the TV. His responses were short. One night, she told him about a sweet memory she'd had of their first trip to New Orleans, and he just said "heem" and went back to scrolling on his phone. That moment stayed with her, not because he was cruel, but because he no longer seemed to care. When someone stops being curious, it's not about your stories being dull or repetitive. It's about them no longer seeing you as a vital part of their world. You become background noise instead of someone they actively engage with. And let me tell you, that realization can hit harder than any argument ever could. Another sign that often creeps in quietly is a noticeable decrease in patience. You know those little quirks we all have? Forgetting where we put the keys, asking the same question twice, taking our time to get the right words out. Sign number 2, decrease in patience. When love is strong, those things are met with grace, maybe even a bit of humor. But when love starts to slip, the reactions change. Suddenly, a repeated story becomes an annoyance. A small mistake feels like a burden. The warmth in their voice is replaced with sighs, rolled eyes, or short, sharp answers. You begin to feel like a bother in your own home. Take Grace, for example. She's 72 and lives outside Asheville, North Carolina. Grace has always been a little absent-minded. Nothing major, just the usual stuff. Her partner Tom used to call her my little scatterbrain in the most affectionate way. He'd find her reading glasses in the fridge, and they'd laugh about it. But lately, Tom's been different. The other week, when she asked him to help her set up a Zoom call with their granddaughter, he snapped, "Can't you figure it out yourself?" He didn't mean to be mean, not really, but it stung. That moment may have seemed small on the surface, but to Grace, It said a lot. Because when someone's love starts to fade, patience is often the first thing to go. What once felt like a team effort now feels like walking on eggshells. And that's not the kind of home anyone should have to live in. When we stop feeling safe to ask questions, to make mistakes, or to just be ourselves around the person we love, that's a sign. A quiet one, yes, but a sign nonetheless. And maybe you found yourself second-guessing. Am I being too needy? Am I overreacting? I want to tell you right now, you're not. You're noticing a change. And it's okay to acknowledge that. You're allowed to expect kindness, even in the small moments. Especially in the small moments. These first signs, loss of curiosity and lack of patience, don't usually come with big announcements or dramatic exits. They come with glances not returned, stories not heard, questions answered with irritation instead of care. And if you're feeling that shift, it matters. You matter. Now, let's keep this conversation going because there's more to explore. Sometimes the clearest signs aren't in what someone says, but in what they stop doing altogether. Because when someone stops showing up, not just physically but emotionally, you start to feel it in the quiet spaces. The dinners eaten in silence, the evenings spent in separate rooms, the lack of shared moments that used to feel like second nature. There's something deeply human about wanting to share time with someone you love. It's not always about doing grand things. It's about sitting together with coffee in the morning, folding laundry while chatting, watching a show you've both seen a dozen times just because it feels good to sit close. Time, when given willingly, is one of the most precious forms of love we have. Sign number 3, withdrawal of shared time. So when that time starts to disappear, not because of schedules or health, but because of choice, it can be a clear sign that something has shifted. Let me tell you about Carol and Dennis, a couple from Mesa, Arizona. For years, they had a little evening ritual. After dinner, they'd sit on their back patio, sip tea, and just talk, or sometimes not talk at all, just enjoy the stillness together. It was their way of ending the day together. But slowly, Dennis began skipping it. At first, he said he had emails to answer. Then it was, "I'm tired," or "I've already gone for a walk earlier." Carol didn't think much of it at first, but the evening started to feel longer, quieter, emptier. One night, she made 2 cups of tea, set them out, and waited. Dennis never came outside. The tea got cold. She sat there alone, listening to the wind in the trees, and realized she couldn't remember the last time they'd just been together without a reason. When someone stops making time for you, it's not always because they're overwhelmed. Often, it's because their heart has started to drift. Instead of sharing space, they seek distance. More errands, more time on their phone, more time out of the house without including you. And the hardest part? They may not even realize they're doing it, but you do. You feel it. And that feeling, that slow withdrawal of presence, is something worth listening to. Sign number 4, emotional withdrawal. And just like time begins to fade, so too does emotional closeness. You may still share a bed, still make each other's coffee, still say good morning and good night, but something has gone quiet underneath. They don't open up like they used to. You sense a wall where there used to be warmth. They no longer tell you about what's going on at work, or with their family, or how they're really feeling. It's like they've closed a door to the part of themselves they used to invite you into freely. Think about James and Linda from Columbus, Ohio. For most of their 40-year marriage, James was the talker. He'd tell Linda everything, his worries about work, his concerns about their son, even the little anxieties that came with aging. Linda was his sounding board, his safe place. But over time, that changed. When James's brother passed away, Linda didn't even find out until days later. When she asked why he hadn't told her, he just shrugged and said, "Didn't want to upset you." But she knew it wasn't about sparing her feelings. It was about him no longer choosing to let her in. And that kind of silence is deafening. When love is strong, vulnerability is natural. We share, not because we must, but because it feels right. It feels safe. But when love begins to fade, people pull back. They keep things to themselves. They stop trusting you with their inner world, even if they still live in the same home or share the same meals. It's not that they've stopped talking entirely. It's that they no longer talk deeply. The conversations become surface level, logistical, polite. You become more of a roommate than a confidant, and it hurts. It hurts not just because of the lack of words, but because of what those unspoken words represent. Distance, detachment, and the slow erosion of closeness. And maybe you've tried to reach out. You've asked how they're doing, tried to get them to open up, only to hear, "I'm fine," or "Don't worry about it." But you're not fine, because you know something's off. You feel it in the way they look away instead of towards you, in the way they change the subject, and how the important things, the fears, the joys, the worries, they no longer come to you first. That emotional withdrawal is one of the most painful parts of growing apart from someone you once felt inseparable from. And the truth is, they may not even be doing it with malice. Sometimes, people disconnect not out of cruelty, but out of confusion, fatigue, or their own unspoken pain. But regardless of why, you still deserve honesty. You still deserve to feel like you matter in the places that count most. If this feels familiar to you, if you've noticed more silence than laughter, more distance than connection, know that you're not alone, and it's not something you should ignore or accept quietly. Because emotional intimacy, especially later in life, is just as vital as physical health. We thrive on being understood, on being seen, on being cared for beyond the surface. You deserve to feel like you're still someone's person, that even after all these years, you still have that space in their heart where you're safe, cherished, and truly known. We've talked about the loss of curiosity, the slipping away of patience, the gradual disappearance of shared time, and now the quiet closing off of emotional door. And while these signs may come softly, their impact is anything but small. They shape the way we feel in our own homes, in our own skin, and in the arms of someone who once felt like home. So, if you've noticed any of these shifts, I hope this conversation gives you a sense of clarity. Not to make you sad or discouraged, but to help you trust your instincts, to know that your longing for connection is not unreasonable. It's human, and it's worthy of being honored. Sometimes, when the heart begins to disconnect, the body follows close behind. Because as emotional closeness begins to unravel, the body often follows in step. It's subtle at first. A missed hug, a shorter goodnight kiss, less hand-holding when you're out together. But over time, those missing gestures become more frequent, and the warmth that once filled your shared spaces, your living room, your bed, your morning routine, starts to cool. Sign number 5. Physical withdrawal. Physical touch has a language of its own. It's not just about romance or desire. It's about presence. It's about reassurance. A hand on your back while walking through the grocery store. A quick kiss on the forehead just because. A brush of the arm while you're both watching TV. These little acts say, "I see you. I'm here. I still choose you." But when that stops, when their body starts turning away instead of leaning in, it can feel like you're losing something much deeper. Let me tell you about Harold and Diane from Santa Fe, New Mexico. They'd been married for 45 years, and physical affection was always a quiet but steady part of their love. Harold would hold Diane's hand on walks. She'd rub his shoulders after he trimmed the hedges. They'd always gone to sleep touching, even if it was just their feet brushing under the blanket. But after Harold retired, Diane noticed a shift. He stopped reaching for her hand. He stopped leaning in for a kiss before bed. She tried at first to keep the rhythm going. She would gently rest her hand on his knee while they watched a movie or sit closer on the porch swing. But he would suddenly shift away. Nothing mean. Nothing loud. Just enough to make her pull back. Confused, she told me once. I felt like I was intruding on someone who used to be mine. That's the kind of grief no one warns you about. Not when there's a funeral or a goodbye, but when the loss is slow, silent, and happening right next to you. And it's not always about attraction, age, or health. Sometimes, physical withdrawal is simply the outward sign of an emotional one. When someone stops loving you, truly loving you in that full present way, they often stop expressing it with their body. They sit further away. Their hugs feel routine, not comforting. The warmth that once felt automatic now feels rehearsed, or worse, absent. And here's the part that can be hardest to admit. Many of us stop reaching out, not because we want to, but because we're scared of being rejected. We stop offering affection because we're not sure it will be returned. And slowly, that silence between bodies becomes just as loud as the emotional silence we talked about earlier. But you deserve more than that. You deserve to feel held, to be touched with kindness, to experience closeness that doesn't make you question your worth. And if you've noticed the way their body turns away when you lean in, if your hugs feel more like formality than love, it may be time to ask yourself some honest questions. Not just about what's changed, but about what you need, what you miss, what you're willing to live without, and what you're not. Because here's the truth. Love doesn't just show up in words. It shows up in where someone places their hands, where they sit in a room, whether they reach for you first, or always wait for you to initiate. And if you're always the one reaching, always the one trying, always the one closing the gap, then you're not in a mutual connection anymore. You're carrying the weight of it alone, and I know that's heavy. Sometimes, the most painful part of growing older isn't the aches, the memory lapses, or the slowing down. It's feeling invisible in the eyes of someone who once looked at you like you were everything. And while it can be tempting to minimize these signs, to say, well, we've just been together a long time, or maybe they're just stressed, there's a difference between life's normal rhythms and the erosion of love. So if you've seen these signs, less curiosity, less patience, less time together, less emotional connection, and less physical closeness, don't ignore them. They're not in your head. They're not just part of aging. They're signals that something important has shifted, and pretending not to notice won't protect you. It will only delay the healing. But here's the good news. Awareness is powerful. Once you can see clearly, you can stop blaming yourself. You can stop wondering if you're the problem. You can stop twisting yourself into someone smaller just to keep the peace. Instead, you can start asking the right questions. Am I being treated with care? Do I feel emotionally safe here? Is this the kind of connection I want to grow old in? And maybe the answers will lead you to a conversation, or to a counselor, or to a decision. But no matter what path you choose, it begins with honesty, with courage, with compassion for yourself, and for the life you still deserve to live fully. I want to remind you of something important before we end this conversation. Real love shows up. It leans in. It keeps choosing you day after day, year after year, even when things are hard, even when routines feel dull, even when your hair has turned silver and your knees ache in the morning. Love that lasts isn't perfect, but it doesn't disappear without a trace either. It makes space. It listens. It shows up in the quiet. And you, yes you, are worthy of that kind of love. So, if you're watching this right now and something inside you is saying, "That's me," don't silence that voice. That voice is wisdom. That voice is strength. That voice is the beginning of you returning home to yourself. And we're with you. You're not alone. Not alone. If this spoke to you in any way, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what resonated, or what you've experienced, or what you're realizing now. Reading your stories helps others feel less alone, and reminds all of us that connection matters. If this video helped you, please give it a like, share it with a friend who might need it, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us keep creating honest, heartfelt content for people like you. People who know that it's never too late to seek love, clarity, and joy. Thank you for spending your time with us today. And remember, you are not too old, too late, or too far gone for a love that feels real again. You are worthy. Yep, you are seen. And you are deeply loved. We'll see you next time.